Hi, good morning. I'm Jason. Well, last Sunday I talked about fasting and asked if you have fasted and what that means to you, and also asked for a bit of homework to ask you to read Isaiah 58 preparing for this. But a quick review of last Sunday about fasting. I kind of broke it down into three categories: the up category, the in category, and the out category. Up meaning we oftentimes enter into fasting wanting to get something from God possibly, or a connection with God. And oftentimes, at least in my own experiences, I enter into fasting hoping that God does something, almost like receiving from God's hand, only to come to realize over and over again what I'm actually seeking is not the hand of God, but the face of God. And in the in category, realizing that I'm looking for God somewhere, hoping to find God somewhere, and then come to find out that God is in the midst of me and in the midst of the community around me. And then in the out category, when you don't eat or you cease to have something for a window of time, you can go, oh, that's right, there are people in the world that don't have enough food, don't have enough whatever. They're lacking water, they're lacking food, they're lacking justice. And so in Isaiah chapter 58 is this section that sometimes is subtitled true fasting. And so you have fasting, which is oftentimes associated with something that you don't do. And then true fasting is what it seems to be associated with something that you do. But what is that? And so Isaiah is an Old Testament prophet. So if you would turn there to Isaiah chapter 58, we're going to look at the first 10 verses. Isaiah chapter 58, verses 1 through 10. If you would turn there. So some context here. This is Old Testament. This is during a long window of time waiting for the arrival of the Messiah. This is before Jesus of Nazareth was born, before the coming of the awaited Messiah. This is a book, this is a prophecy written during that time. And so we need to realize the primary context, as I actually talked about 2-3 weeks ago, the primary context of Isaiah being not related to the United States of America, not related directly to what's happening now in this land in this time, but certainly as a secondary understanding of interpretation, realizing that there is life application to be gleaned from in the midst of this, a new thing that God would teach us now, even though the primary context had to do with a nation that God was reminding people things about through the prophet Isaiah. Verse 1 says, "Shout it aloud, do not hold back." As some translations say, call out with a full throat. It means make this loud and clear. And so at the very beginning here is, okay, this needs to be, I hope you hear, I'm going to be loud. You make sure to be loud about this. Shout it aloud, don't hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people, again, this is God telling Isaiah something to prophesy to his people. Declare to my people their rebellion, and to the house of Jacob their sins. Make this loud and clear, Isaiah. There should be nothing quiet about this. And oftentimes what prophets did was they did crazy, loud, weird things that got people's attention. So make your voice like a trumpet. This should be really, really, really loud and clear. There should be no wondering what's happening here. No wondering what this is about. No one should get through this without hearing it loud and clear. Verse 2, "For day after day they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near them. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed? So why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it?" We so want God's approval, don't we? we want God to see and affirm and approve of and congratulate us for all of our pious actions, right? We fast and then we go, what's the point of fasting if God's not even paying attention to me? Me. If I'm not going to get any credit for this, what's the point? If I don't get bonus points for fasting, well, then why am I even doing it at all, right? So there's the posture. And it says, why have we humbled ourselves? And some translations say afflicted ourselves. And so one of the translations, or one of the words for fasting in the Hebrew is an idiom. It's self-affliction. So in some ways, some understandings of fasting is not just about, ceasing to eat or ceasing to do something as a means of feeling a connection that I don't need this food, I need God. For some, at least in this time, humbling themselves or fasting was self-affliction. Like, I'm hurting myself here so that I can get your attention. I'm hurting myself so that something can happen. Right? And so this, instead of just thinking as fasting, at least to some of these people in this ancient time, it wasn't just ceasing to eat or something. It had to do with a self-affliction. So I'm hurting myself and you haven't even noticed. Are you not going to pay attention to the fact that I'm fasting, that I'm afflicting myself? And then here's the response to that. The people say, well, why have we fasted and you haven't seen it? Why have we afflicted ourselves and you haven't even noticed? Yet, on the day of your fasting, you do as you please. You do as you please and exploit all your workers. So to be claiming to be afflicting ourselves, but in reality, just pursuing pleasures for ourselves, and even worse, to be afflicting others, isn't that like the ultimate hypocrisy? God, why aren't you paying attention to me? I'm hurting myself here so that you'll pay attention to me. And the response is, you say that you're hurting yourself, and all I see is that you're helping yourself, and you're actually hurting others. You're exploiting others. And so there's an injustice. There's not balance. There's not, things are not like they should be, nor are they even like the people were saying that they are. So if fasting, in a sense, involves affliction of oneself, or you could say maybe denial of oneself, denying yourself of something, wouldn't the ultimate betrayal of that be to deny others? Right? So that you can see why this section would be called true fasting. You say you're fasting, you say you're denying yourself, but in fact you're not denying yourself, and to make it worse, you are denying others. To say that you're denying yourself, but in reality being denying others, seems to be among the most ultimate forms of hypocrisy, right? It seems a bit ironic or hypocritical to say, I am seeking God and the knowledge of God's ways, and in the meantime, our actions being in complete contrast to the ways of God. I think that's why in Matthew 25, Jesus says, well, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. And the response, Lord, when did we do that? I don't remember doing that. And he said, well, when you do that to the least of these, you do it for me. And then same goes for if you didn't do it. I was hungry and you didn't give me something to eat. I was thirsty. You didn't give me something to drink. I was a stranger and you didn't invite me in. I needed clothes and you didn't clothe me. I was sick and you didn't look after me. I was in prison. You didn't come to visit me. When did I not visit you, Lord? Well, whenever you didn't do this, whenever you didn't do these things for the least, then you didn't do them for me. But we have figured out in our nice little modern religious ways to somehow put an asterisk to so many things that Jesus has said, right? So many ways of God, the knowledge and wisdom of God. There's an asterisk so many times in our life application. It seems pretty clear here. If you visit anyone that's in trouble, someone who's been afflicted, someone who's hungry, someone who's thirsty, someone who's naked, someone who's sick, someone who's in prison, anytime you do that, it is as if you are visiting and helping and consoling and being face to face with Christ, right? He said it. But we put an asterisk, right? Well, we say, well, I don't know, those people in prison deserve to be in prison. So I have a thought here. Because it doesn't seem to matter to Jesus in this sentiment whether those in prison deserve to be in prison or not. It shouldn't change whether we go and visit them. But I just kind of want to play a little game here. I want to think about something for a moment. Hypothetically, think with me. What if they didn't deserve to be in prison? And here's what I mean. They lived in first century Roman-occupied Israel, where there was a lot of injustice. There was a lot of corruption. There was a lot of false power. The king wasn't even supposed to be the king, not even according to their ways and laws and regulations. It was all corrupt. So in a completely corrupt society where the person in charge wasn't even supposed to be in charge, and there was a Caesar that came in and was taxing people in a way that is ridiculous, where they could barely even afford to survive, and not even to help the people, but just to take for Rome. Religious elite leaders that are completely, as Jesus said, converting people into twice the sons of hell that they are. Total corruption in political leadership, corruption in religious leadership. What if they didn't deserve to be in prison? Like, for instance, Jesus not deserving to be arrested. So if you visit someone in prison and they don't deserve to be there, then in a way you're overcoming or giving prophetic commentary to injustice and religious elitism and political corruption by visiting someone who unjustly ended up there. Are you with me? And so in that culture, let's just say that some of these people in prison weren't supposed to be there. Then whenever you came and visited me, whenever you came and visited anyone, the least of these, you did it unto me, because I didn't even deserve to be arrested, right? Jesus didn't even deserve to be arrested. So maybe sometimes if you visit someone in prison, you are actually making prophetic commentary that they don't even deserve to be there, and you're saying, I don't care what the system said, I will be face to face with this person, and I will be there and love them and see them for who they really are. Or you might say, right now you might say, that's a bit of a stretch. They probably deserve to be there, right? I know it's corrupt, but I mean, people are in prison because they deserve to be there. That's to be debated. And I don't really know, obviously, whether all the prisoners deserve to be there. I do know that it was a corrupt system. Okay, but let's go the other way. And if let's say they do deserve to be there, that means if you visit the one in prison that does deserve to be there, that means that they are guilty. That means that they are a criminal. Then Jesus is claiming that that's him. You see, so if you visit him in prison because he doesn't deserve to be there, you're making commentary on the corrupt system in visiting him anyway. And then if he does deserve to be there, meaning the image of God found in and through the Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, whenever you visit someone in prison that does deserve to be there, then Jesus is saying that that's still him, that you are visiting him, that you are facing him face to face in the midst of a criminal. Do you feel that? Do you understand what's being said there? I think that Jesus is saying, he is claiming that his very likeness and image and presence is found even in the guilty criminal. So let's get rid of the asterisks, because if the asterisk says, well, there's people in prison, I don't know, they deserved it. If they didn't deserve it, you're visiting Jesus because he didn't deserve the injustice. And if you're visiting a criminal that does deserve it because they're guilty of a crime, Jesus is saying, yes, my presence and likeness and image is found even in the guilty criminal. Thus, Jesus is found in both the face of the innocent in the midst of injustice and in the face of the guilty in the midst of justice. What I mean is, whether someone is innocent or guilty doesn't seem to matter of whether we're supposed to visit them. And it doesn't seem to matter regarding whether it's Jesus or not. Whenever you do this, it's like you're doing it to me. You do this to me whenever you visit or whenever you don't visit Visiting the prisoner seems to embody the genuine justice of what it seems the ministry of Jesus was about. Sight to the blind, good news to the poor. For Jesus, justice seems to involve visiting the prisoners, whether they're guilty or not, displaying love and displaying healing with presence. So what if we stopped? Let me say it this way. Let's stop making excuses and adding asterisks to things. Let's stop making excuses and sort of softening and putting asterisks to the way of Jesus. And let's actively believe that Christ is found in the hungry and thirsty and the naked and the sick and the prisoners. Not with an asterisk. Not like, well, that really means you're just supposed to help people. What if, let me say it again, what if we actively believe that Jesus is found in those that are hungry, thirsty, naked, sick, and in prison? So here's some quick commentary on first century Israel within the context of Jesus saying this. I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. Here's some commentary. So in the Torah, the law, the instruction of God, the first 5 books of the Bible, 613 Old Testament laws, but these 5 books that are like the way that God instructed Israel to live. God gave clear instructions of the way Israel was to be, how they were to treat each other, how they were to worship, how they were to be a society with one another. The very idea, within the context of the society that God told Israel to be, how they were to worship, how they were to treat each other, the very idea, the reality of there being people who are hungry and thirsty in first century Israel is a clear indication that their system had been shattered. Do you understand? Because God gave instruction to Israel, do this, treat people like this, worship like this. This is how you are to be. This is how you treat your neighbor. If this thing happens, this is how you handle it. It wasn't just a set of rules that's supposed to oppress people. In some ways, it's like this way of being. It's a list, but it's like, if this thing happens between you and your neighbor, this is how you solve it. And part of that had to do with making sure no one's going to be hungry and thirsty. And so the fact that when Jesus says, when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. According to the way that God instructed Israel to live, there shouldn't even be any hungry or thirsty people. You with me? And so if you go and visit and feed the hungry and the thirsty, it's already a commentary that things are broken. It's already a commentary that the system isn't working like God instructed the system to be. Israel is not being the Israel that she was instructed to be. There's corruption there in the very nature of the reality of there even being people hungry. The system was shattered. And that's why there were people that were hungry. That's why there were people that were thirsty. And what's worse, it was actually done on purpose through greed. And what's worse is it seems as if a lot of that greed was the greed of the religious leaders. So going back to Isaiah 58, you say you're afflicting yourself, you say you're fasting, and yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please, and here it is, exploit all your workers. In verse 4, your fasting, you can almost hear this, right? The prophetic commentary. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife. You see? You say you're afflicting just like self-affliction and denying yourself. No. There's quarreling and there's affliction of others. In striking each other with wicked fists. So there seems to be a connection here. There's a connection between false fasting and injustice. False fasting is a claim that you're denying yourself. In reality, you're denying others. You're marginalizing others. You're pushing others out. You're hurting others. So false fasting is a lie. It's a lie that you're appealing to God while you're oppressing people. False fasting would be a lie that you are appealing to God, and while you're appealing to God, you are oppressing those that are made in the image of God. And so that brings up in my mind 1 John chapter 4, verse 20. 1 John 4:20, whoever claims to love God, the appeal, whoever claims to love God, yet hates his brother or sister, is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother or sister whom they have seen, cannot love God whom they have not seen. So one of the reasons I think, even though it's not in the original text, why people along the way subtitled Isaiah 58 true fasting, because false fasting is what the people are doing. I'm appealing to God and I'm oppressing those that are made in the image of God. Or as 1 John says, I'm claiming that I love God and I can't even love my sister or my brother. If we hate the one we can see, we can't claim to love the one we have not yet even seen. It's a lie. So I think it's pretty clear when we appeal to God, oh God, when we appeal to God, but we oppress people, we're lying. What does that mean? What that means is we're not even appealing to God. It's a facade, it's a lie, it's a fabrication, it's religion, it's empty religion. Oh God, I love you. I thank you. Teach me your ways. And then we go and hurt people. We weren't even praying, right? We didn't even mean those words. It's a lie. And I think that this lie is precisely the hypocrisy that so many prophets were essentially, that's what they were addressing over and over and over. And so verse 5, well, actually finishing verse 4, you cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high, right? You can't fast as you do today, oh God, and then oppress people and expect the, oh God. You don't expect God to be listening to that, do you? And it's not even real, and it's fabricated, when it's an empty shell. No. Verse 5, is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for a man to humble himself? It's like this question of, in a way, what's happening here is there's a difference between real fasting that God says is true and real versus the fasting that had become part of the religion, part of the custom, part of the cultural manifestation of this word, this fasting. God's saying, did I set this up this way? Is this the kind of fasting that I chose for somebody to hurt themselves? And what's worse is to not even really do that. They just hurt other people. Is it only, verse 5 says, is it only for bowing one's head like a reed, or for lying on sackcloth and ashes? This is the self-affliction. Is that what fasting means? Is that what I set up for you to say, oh God, and lay down, bowing like a reed, like laying? Is it you just bow down and you lay down in sackcloth and ashes, which was a ritual of mourning? Is that what I set up? Can you hear this back and forthness where God's like, did I set up the kind of fasting where you try to bow down and hurt yourself and woe is me and lay down in ash and starve yourself? And is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? I love this. God's like, did I set this up? Is that what you call fasting? Really? So what you have here is a religious setup, a religious way where there's like, woe is me, oh God, look at all the things I'm doing to look at all the ways I'm denying myself, look at all the postures of, oh, I'm bowing to you, and oh, whoa, look, don't you see it? God, don't you see it? Come on, God, look at all that I've done. Don't you see it? I'm denying myself. You don't even see it. And God's like, you say you're denying yourself. You're not denying anything. You're denying other people. You really think that that's fasting? You really think that you skipping some meals, meanwhile you're hurting your neighbor, is somehow fasting? Is not this the kind of fasting I've chosen? Verse 6. Here it is. This is God's definition of fasting, as it seems. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke, and to set the oppressed free and break every yoke. Let me read that again. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, untie the cords of the yoke, set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry? So there's that connection with what Jesus said. To share your food with the hungry and provide the poor wanderer with shelter. When you see the naked, to clothe him, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Some translations say your own flesh. This is most likely not, flesh and blood is most likely, based on the Hebrew there, not necessarily talking about direct family as much as your fellow human being. You share a condition with all humans as these creatures of flesh and blood. To deny human beings, your sister or your brother, if you will. All people are your brother and your sister. So there it is. Fasting. Is it just skip a meal to remind yourself that you need God? Maybe. I think that's good, and that's part of it. Not so much needing the hand of God to give you something. Not just so God sees that you did it and you get God's attention, and then somehow God owes you something because you skipped a day's worth of food. No. It's realizing that what you're really longing for is the face of God, and also that God is not just some thing or someone out there, but the kingdom of God is in our midst, that God is in us and with us and in the midst of us and those around us, and then to remember, oh, that's right, there are people that don't have enough food. So that's part of it. And I think once we remember that there are those that don't have enough, they don't have enough food, they don't have enough water, they don't have clothes, they don't have justice, they don't have what is right. Then the question is, are we content just skipping a meal as we remember them? Are we okay skipping a meal in honor and in remembrance of those who don't have enough food? Or are we okay maybe not drinking a glass of water, and as we don't drink that glass of water, we say, oh man, that must be so hard for people that don't have enough water? Or is true fasting when we realize that quite possibly that we are in a broken system, a shattered society, and just denying ourselves of something isn't really the point? Maybe fasting is, in fact, not about affliction at all. Maybe fasting is about making things right. Maybe fasting is about things being like they should be. Because if we were to follow the ways of God and the wisdom of God, walk in the ways of the kingdom, if we were to live like Jesus, if we were to walk in the ways of Christ, I don't think people would be hungry, right? And so when we realize that there's someone that's hungry, we go and we give them something to eat. And when we do that, we're connecting with Jesus in a way like no other. When we visit Jesus in prison, we are connecting with him in a way like no other. And verse 8 says, then Your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you. Righteousness means when things are as they should be. And the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. See, then, that's when it'll happen. You will cry for help, and he will say, here I am. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk. There it is again. I've talked about this several times, but this pointing finger, it's like this accusation. The literal meaning here is extending the finger. This finger for this video. Extending the finger in accusation. So I was hoping that I could bring us to a call to action now as we finish our video this morning. So I want to ask something just collectively as a church family, the Heart, but also just as those who want to be followers of Christ. And wonder, are we focusing maybe a little too much on the quality of our live streams during COVID? And maybe instead of focusing on the quality of a program, if we kind of shift for a moment. Like I'm in our office. It's just me and my phone. I'm not supposed to be around people right now. And instead of thinking that somehow that's not quite enough, should we be doing church somehow better than this right now? What if the identity of church isn't so much about some quality of a product that we deliver on Sunday or whenever, but what if we've focused less on the quality of our live streams and started focusing on loving our neighbors, right? What if we actually didn't think as much about whatever product we consumed, but we started feeding the hungry? What if we visited people when we're allowed to visit people? What if we realize that the posture and nature and identity of the church less has to do with some program that we have, and it has more to do with being on the side of the oppressed, because that's where Jesus is waiting for us, and he said it that way, right? When we feed the hungry, we meet Jesus. When we give water to the thirsty, when we care for someone who's sick, we give clothes to someone who's naked, when we visit someone in prison, we are interacting face to face with Jesus. And so what if the response here in Isaiah is, you say that you're trying to seek me by not eating and afflicting yourself, but maybe, and then the connection with Jesus' words here with the Isaiah passages, what if you actually started feeding the poor, righting the things that have been wrong, seeking justice where there has been injustice? In the midst of seeking justice where there's injustice, you will then accomplish the actual goal that you set out when you were fasting, which is the face of God. You want to skip a meal to try to connect with the face of God? Go for it. Maybe it'll happen, but don't think that somehow that's the fullness of fasting, because it seems as if through the book of Isaiah here, through the prophet Isaiah, the fullness of fasting has to do with the least of these. So here's the call to action. When this video is over, will you go to theHeart.us? Real simple call to action. Life application right now. We have several ways us as a church family can get involved in these. It's a limited list, but it's a specific list. Go to theHeart.us and then click on COVID-19 updates. Real simple. theHeart.us or heart.us, and then you're going to see at the top, COVID-19 updates. COVID-19 updates. Then you scroll down, and you'll see our Love in Action initiative. Love in Action. You can act. It says act, ask, love. Act, ask, love. We want to acknowledge that some of you might not be in a position to be able to help others. You might be in deep need right now. There's a form for you to fill out. Act, ask, love. We have opportunities right now where you can go to theHeart.us, then click on COVID-19 updates, scroll down, and you will see opportunities there are volunteers needed right now at the Hunger and Health Coalition. So if you're like, yeah, I want to meet Jesus by feeding him a meal, there are volunteers needed at Hunger and Health Coalition. There are volunteers needed. There's an opportunity to do music therapy for older adults with dementia. There we go. The least of these, right? Do you want to be a part of meeting Jesus face to face by being a part of music therapy for older adults with dementia? Older adults with dementia, volunteering with music therapy, and you might in fact then realize, oh, that's where the face of God has been waiting this whole time. There are opportunities for food distribution. There's an opportunity to prepare a hot meal. We prepare multiple hot meals a month at Hospitality House. You can donate to theHeart's COVID-19 response, and you can see different COVID-19 resources and support groups. And more, there's more. So at the end of this video, this morning, or whenever you end up watching this, go to theheart.us, top of the screen, COVID-19 updates, scroll down and look for all sorts of opportunities. This is not just for us to stay busy. If you don't want to do it in conjunction with this particular church program, whatever. But do you want to meet Jesus face to face? Because it seems as if this true fasting, this desire that maybe you have, to skip some food so that you feel connected with God more, maybe the fullness of that. I mean, maybe you should do that. Skip some food and be hungry so that you hunger and thirst for righteousness and not just for food, that you hunger and thirst for the face of God, not just for food. And also, my sisters and my brothers, may you realize that the fullness of that, the completion of the skipping of the food, would be that you remember those that are without and you go meet Jesus by providing him a meal. Meet Jesus by giving him something to drink. And so, my sisters and my brothers, may you believe these things about God, and may you also believe these things about yourself. May you act now and not delay. May we stop putting asterisks around things and believe that we will and do connect with the image, likeness, and very presence of Jesus anytime we go to the edges. May the Lord bless you and keep you and be gracious to you and turn his face towards you and shine his light on you and grant you with peace.